Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, don't expect less from Allgeier. Don't put too much into this series. And what's the difference about Arthur? It's all next. It's Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Hittin Hard is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Get the latest episodes of Hittin Hard as soon as they become available. Also, check us out on the Sirius XM app as well, and give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. So, obviously, a lot of massive buzz around Bijan Robinson coming into the season. You know, everything from offensive rookie of the year to he's going to lead the league in rushing to he's going to have, the greatest rookie season in the history of mankind and everything basically, in between. But, we may be sleeping a little bit on the role that Tyler Allgeier is going to have for this team. Now, Allgeier had a magnificent year last year. When you look, he only started seven games last year, 210 carries for 1,035 yards and the 3 touchdowns, while he averaged 4.9 yards per rush. And I think it was 3.6 yards after contact. So when you look at what this offense is going to be, don't sleep on what Allgeier's contributions or what his numbers are going to be. There's no real reason for Allgeier to take a step back. I mean, again, if you look at 210 carries in only 7 starts, there's no real reason to think that, and again, I know he played 16 games, but there's no reason to think that he can't be a 1,000-yard back, where he's still going to be at times the feature back. And what I say about that is just because the way that they're going to use Robinson isn't just as a traditional lineup in the eye type of running back. Like, they will have Bijan Robinson playing in all different parts of the field. So again, and we've talked about, that it's no mystery, they're going to use him a lot in the passing game. So his total yards and things may be higher than, again, that's the part that will that's the part that will get him a lot of acclimates and things like that. But there's no reason to think that Tyler Allgeier can't be a 1,000-yard running back in this offense. Look, instead of having Derrick Henry accumulate 400 carries and run for 2,000 yards, whatever like that, there's no reason to think that Bijan and Allgeier can't split that duty up amongst the two of them and both be 1,000-yard running backs. And I've said this consistently, that I think your hot take for the year, isn't Robinson leading the league in rushing, because I don't think they're going to give him enough of that opportunity. Not because he's not a good player, but they're just not going to give him enough of that opportunity. I do think, though, that Allgeier and Robinson will be 1,000-yard running backs in this offense. And even if that means Bijan is a 1,010-yard running back over the course of 17 games, then still is a 1,000-yard running back at the end of the day. But don't sleep on what Tyler Allgeier means to this offense. In a lot of ways, he still is their lead running back. He's still the guy that's going to grind out a whole bunch of yards for this team. And again, the numbers are pretty remarkable. The fact that, yes, he played 16 games, but he only started 7 times, and he only accumulated 210 carries, and he averaged almost 5 yards per carry. So again, maybe Allgeier, and last year he had 16 receptions for 139 yards. Maybe that's about where the number for him is. And if you look at some of the carries that were distributed last year, 144 for Cordero Patterson. To be honest with you, I could see that number going down by 100 carries. that they don't use Patterson as much. They maybe increase a little bit of his load in the passing game, where he had 31 targets on 21 receptions last year. I could see the carry number go down, but the reception and target number go up. Marcus Mariota, he had 85 rushes last year. Obviously, Desmond Ridder, while he's mobile, probably won't accumulate that. So again, even if you're talking about, say, even 20 or 25 rushes, then that's going to be 20 or 25 carries that are either going to be distributed to an Allgeier or a Robinson. And Caleb Huntley had 76 carries last year in the offense. Okay, that's probably, again, a number that's going to be distributed to the two running backs. Avery Williams had 22 carries last year. Obviously, Avery Williams isn't here this year. So that may be the carries that Cordarrelle Patterson gets. So again, I definitely think that Allgeier is going to have a big role in running the football and kind of being that lead back. And especially because, look, we've seen Arthur not be as quick on the draw to push his rookies out to start making plays right away. Look, even Kyle Pitts, who was the number 4 overall pick, highest drafted tight end in NFL history and all that kind of stuff, he worked him slow into the beginning of the year in the offense. There were times when we didn't see him on third down early in the year, and they worked him into the offense and didn't overload him. So I expect the same thing out of Robinson. But Allgeier is still set to have a really good season. And again, I don't know, I haven't gone through the numbers to look and see, but how many times have we had back-to-back 1,000-yard rushers? I know Devonta Freeman did it in 16 and 17. I know Michael Turner did it in 08, 09, and probably even 10 and 11 and 12, But again, we don't have guys that typically have been consistently running for 1,000 yards in this offense. No reason to think that Allgeier can have a big role in this. Like I said, maybe his numbers stay pretty flat from the passing game aspect of it, because they look at Robinson as a guy who, you get him out in space, he can accumulate more yards in the passing game. But certainly that there's a big role for Tyler Allgeier to be had. Look, it's going to be fun with Patterson, Robinson, Allgeier, the way that they use all of these guys. And I expect at times that all three of those guys will find themselves on the field. I think Patterson becomes more of that wide receiver slot guy that's catching passes. He may be, quote unquote, designated as a running back, but I think the carries start to minimize. Again, 144, I could easily see 100, 120 less carries for him. And that's not because he's a bad player or anything like that. It's just the nature and the flow of the offense. If you told me that Cordarrelle Patterson had 30 carries and, say, 40 receptions, I'd be fine with that. He's still going to be a player in this offense. And if you told me that Allgeier had the same 210 carries that he had last year, I would tell you that he's still going to run for 1,000 yards, especially behind this offensive line. So while all the hype is obviously around Bijan Robinson and all of the hoopla and all that, and for good reason. Again, people are talking about he's the best running back prospect to come out since Adrian Peterson and all this good kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't believe he's going to lead the league in rushing. I don't think he's going to get that kind of opportunity. I think he's going to do more things in the offense besides just running the football. Because, again, if you're going to lead the league in rushing, you're going to be a dedicated – again, you're going to burn your running back out. Not everybody's built like Derrick Henry. Not everybody can run for 400 carries, or you're just going to burn the tread completely off that tire. If you're going to lead the league in rushing and be a focal point of your passing game, I don't see all of that happening. So, again, don't minimize the contributions that Tyler Allgeier is going to have in this offense. Again, I will say, I think that both guys end up running for 1,000 yards in this offense. They may not run for 12 or 13 or 1,400 yards, but I still think both guys find a way to get over 1,000 yards rushing. And we'll be the first Falcons team to do that since Warrick Dunn and Mike Vick. So, again, I think Allgeier is going to have a big role in what this offense does, and especially being the lead back running the football. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And as we get ready for NFL season, it's coming up on Thursday. It's a week from yesterday. Listen, FanDuel's got you covered as America's #1 sports book. So right now, if you're a new customer to FanDuel, you can go in and bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all new customers who bet the $5, they'll also get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So what a package that is. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets and $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And now's the best time to join FanDuel as we're getting ready for the NFL season. It's an app that's super easy to use, safe, secure. You can bet on everything from player props, scores, more, everything in between. Now is the best time to join. So head to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. Bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets and $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. So it was a really good win for the Braves last night. Strider went to 16-4 on the season. He was good enough, right? 6 innings, 4 runs, 9 strikeouts. He was good enough to, accumulate the win. Lance Lynn gave up 7 runs, including a grand slam to Ronald Acuna Jr., who becomes the first player in Braves history to have 30 homers and 60 RBI. But I will just say that this series is, while it's fun, in the grand scheme of things, really isn't drastically important. Like, I don't believe that this is a series that is for the #1 overall seed. And with the Braves winning last night, obviously they're not going to, they can't even tie with the Dodgers, as far as #1 seed. The Dodgers came in 4 games behind Atlanta, and now Atlanta's won the first game in this series. But really, when you look at Atlanta's schedule the rest of the way, okay, once they get home and from the Dodgers, they come home and play the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay. Cardinals are in last place. They're a dreadful team. The only reason that the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't in last place is because the Cardinals are worse than them. So you got them at home. They stink. Obviously, Philadelphia, that'll be a fun series, but again, it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things because the division's over. The Miami Marlins, they're toast. 3 games in there. You get 3 games at home with Philadelphia. And then the rest of the schedule, when you start on the 21st and go to October 1st, you've got 4 games at Washington, 3 at home with Washington, with a series with the Cubs sandwiched in between. So you look at 7 of the last 10 are against Washington. And then you've got basically the 2 teams that are in the bottom of the division for the NL Central with St. Louis and Pittsburgh. Again, it's not a very difficult schedule. It doesn't set itself up to be a very difficult schedule, even no matter what happens in LA. So while it's fun and it's cool and, people will use it as a measuring stick or whatever, it really isn't that important. Again, even if the Braves had lost 0-4 and they come back home and tie for the best record, in the National League, and now they're competing with that. Okay, you're playing a lot of last place teams. You're playing a lot of vagabond teams. You're playing, trash teams. Other than Philadelphia, who's fighting for a playoff spot, that's it. Pirates, Cardinals, Washington, Fishnets. Like, those teams are really nothing right now. So again, worst case, if the Braves had lost all 4 games, you still find yourself in a situation where you can very much be the #1 seed overall in the National League. Now, look, maybe that's, a big thing, but again, I would rather be the #1 seed than the #2 seed. Both teams are going to play at home. But this series with the Dodgers, while it's fun, maybe doesn't mean as much. And look, obviously, nothing in the division is, going to be on the line or anything like that. I mean, it's certainly a far cry from what last year was, when coming down the stretch, every game mattered and every game was important and this, that, and the other. But this year, with the division being a blowout the way that it is, and the Braves being, now 5 games up on the Dodgers, okay, Braves are just going out there and taking care of their business. They're just going to keep mashing their way through the regular season. They'll mash Pittsburgh. They'll mash St. Louis. They'll mash the Nationals. And they'll just keep doing what they do. And again, I will say, Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to be the MVP of the league. And I do believe that Spencer Strider, if he gets to 300 strikeouts and he leads the league and wins, because again, he's looking at 20 wins and 3 said and done. So again, while it may be fun and it may be exciting to play the Dodgers and everything that goes along with it, in the grand scheme of things, this probably doesn't mean a whole lot, and probably means even less now that the Braves won last night over the Dodgers to ensure that they're not coming home, in a worst case scenario, tied with LA for the best record in the league. Now the Braves have a game in hand, and we'll see what happens. I mean, again, I know that the Braves want to use this as a measuring stick and see what they look like against the Dodgers, and I get all of that. And for, again, fans, it's fun to see how we line up against the Dodgers, because that's our number one arch rival right now, right? In the world of Major League Baseball, our number one arch rival is the LA Dodgers. That's the team that we've battled in the playoffs and, obviously had all kinds of wars with. But right now, the way that this is being set up, where the Braves have now they have a 5-game lead, but they had a 4-game lead going in against the Dodgers, and they have a really weak schedule the rest of the way through. And what will be interesting to see is how much Snitker, as obviously this division is over, how much does he work some guys in, rest some guys, set up his rotation, all these different things to see, to get themselves ready for a playoff run in baseball. And obviously now, as the calendar has just moved into September, there'll be September call-ups and things. So it will be interesting to see, because again, they're not in a divisional race. There's no urgency, for the division. They don't necessarily need to play all of their starters every single day, day in, day out. It will be interesting to see how Snitker handles this last month of the season. Is October 1st. We head into the I should say the regular season wraps up, and then it'll be playoff time after that. And then the Braves will be waiting, because again, they have to have the little short whatever series before they play the number 1 seed. So again, it's fun, but again, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, other than just for fans to say, hey, listen, we've beat our arch enemy, the Dodgers, and we'll see what happens, from there. But when they come back home, the schedule really lightens up. No more Dodgers, Padres, nobody like that. It's a bunch of last place vagabond types of teams that the Braves are going to play. All right, as you listen in and Hitting Hard, make sure you go into whatever podcast platform that you're listening on. Let us know you're an everyday listener to the program. So drop us a note, drop us a line that lets us know that you're an everydayer, as we like to say. You're listening in 5 days a week to the show. So what's the difference about, Arthur Smith? And I thought that this was, interesting for what it was. Arthur Smith talking about, obviously, look, there are definitely expectations and things that come along with year 3, as this is a 3-year plan and getting this franchise on track and making a difference and things like that. But here's a quote from Arthur, and I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from Arthur Smith, what he said the other day. Quote, "What I appreciate about the guys we have is these guys have they have real leadership traits. That's not some phony narrative that people try to hype to justify certain things. These guys are real. That's what allows you to go on and have a practice where it doesn't feel like I'm telling guys to focus like I'm a peewee coach." And then he goes on to say that when you've got the right group of guys in the focus has been there every day. It's never going to be perfect, but that's what you appreciate. You think you have it, but until you go through it, go through 6 weeks, you don't know. But but that part's made my job a lot easier. And look, this is the thing that I appreciate about Arthur Smith, okay? And I've met Arthur Smith. I've had a chance to talk to him multiple times. Again, it's not phony baloney, and I'm going to take my shot. So this is your obligatory shot at Dan Quinn. There was a lot of phoniness with Dan Quinn. And I don't mean he as a human being is a phony, but what he tried to sell us on was a bunch of phony baloney, rock and roll, good time nonsense. Again, Do Right Longer, Fast and Furious, Hunger Games Index, The Bears Loose, Embrace the Suck. Like, again, that message got really stale over a period of time. Now, why did it last as long as it did? Because his quarterback had an MVP season. He found the right offensive coordinator, and everything worked out, and we were in the Super Bowl. We weren't in the Super Bowl because of Dan's coaching. I can assure you that. Again, in a 6-year period, Dan had 3 seasons where he had a 5-game losing streak. That's not easy to do in the NFL unless you're one of the worst franchises in the league. So he had a way to have 3 5-game losing streaks in a 6-year career at the helm. That doesn't happen to usually Super Bowl teams. You might have one of those, but 3? So again, I appreciate Arthur Smith and the players that he has. Look, the Grady Jarrett's, the Calais Campbells, guys that are real leaders on this football team, right? Guys that are true leaders. They're not phony baloney types of guys. And they made a point to bring in these kinds of guys, as well. I mean, obviously Grady's been here, but the idea of a Calais Campbell who looked at this franchise and said, this is where I want to be. This is the team that I want to play for. And when you listen and you talk with Arthur Smith, you get the sense of, how real he is, right? I mean, there's not a lot of phony baloney that's attached to Arthur Smith. And when he talks about the leadership of these guys, and again, we're not perfect and we're trying to, get better every single day. Like, you believe that kind of stuff. And you believe it without the idea of, hey, again, it would be one thing if Arthur Smith came out and said, look, we're not perfect. We're trying to get better. The Bears loose. What? Huh? That's what we got from the last guy. Well, we're trying to grow every day and the Bears loose. And we got to do right longer. What? Huh? What? And we have a really high Hunger Games index for, what we're doing out there. What? Huh? What? Huh? Excuse me? Excuse me? Baking powder? That's what we got from the last guy. And look, it was fine for a while when you win. But when things don't all go your way, you saw how quickly it tanked. We weren't coached very well before that Super Bowl season. We were not coached well after the Super Bowl season. We just had a player that stepped his game up to an elite level. Think about that. I mean, Matt Ryan stepped his game up to an elite level. Elite MVP level. 35, 37 touchdowns, whatever it was. An elite level. And when you have that from a quarterback, you will go really far in the NFL. Again, we've talked about, I've broken down the numbers on my radio show. Start with 19. Go do yourself a favor. Go through, start in 1979 with the MVP of the league, which is Terry Bradshaw. Start in 1979 and go forward to today and see where, when a quarterback wins the MVP of the league, see where that quarterback finishes. Look, just start. I mean, you can do the same exercise that I did. Start in 1979, start with Terry Bradshaw winning the MVP, and then move forward and go every year that a quarterback wins the MVP of the league. Where does that quarterback finish up? Most of the time it's Super Bowl and NFC AFC championship game. So obviously Matt Ryan lifted this franchise up despite what Dan Quinn couldn't do. And that's what I like about Arthur Smith, is just, you get a real guy, you get a football coach, right? I mean, again, the fact that Dan Quinn was being talked about to be an NFL head coach because they drafted a generational type of player tells you about how good Micah Parsons is and how good Matt Ryan was. That people look at Dan Quinn and think that he's any kind of head coach to have in the NFL. So again, I appreciate Arthur, kind of the no nonsense, kind of the, not trying to put out catchphrases, not trying to overhype and things like that. That is, it's again, it's it's all rudder and it's no sail. Like it doesn't just kind of vary. Well, the Bears loose and we got to do right longer and we got a high Hunger Games index. The message has been pretty clear and straightforward that this is a football team that's going to be tough, physical. We're going to do a lot of things. He's obviously a creative mind on offense, and now he's got a lot of weapons to work with on offense. And again, if it doesn't work out, and if it fails miserably, then so be it. It will fail miserably. But I don't think it's all going to be because of what Arthur Smith has done. I think Arthur's a good coach. I think do I think he's an elite coach? No. I don't think he's an elite coach yet. But he could be. And if this team gets its way, and they figure out where we need to be, and now that he's got a roster that he can coach up, yeah, maybe Arthur Smith can make that next step up into the elite world. Again, usually when you talk about elite coaches, you got to be Super Bowl. So again, I believe in Arthur Smith. I trust in what his vision is. I like what I hear from him. When I've had a chance to talk to him, I believe in what he says. And again, I think we're going to be better for it. I feel like for now that, again, and I've asked about this for years, that when we have our football team out there, do we have an advantage on the sidelines? Do we have an advantage on the sidelines? And for the first time in a long time, I feel like we have an advantage on the sidelines. That when we go into a game, we can scheme and change up and do what we have to do to be able to win that game. I feel like for the first time in a whole bunch of years that we have a guy that on the sidelines gives us an advantage. That's what I've wanted for a long time. All right, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard your first listen. Be sure to go in and leave us a note on whatever podcast platform that you listen on that you're an everyday listener to the program. So drop us a comment, drop us a line, let us know that you're an everyday or 5 days a week into the show. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Get the latest episodes of Hittin' Hard as soon as they become available. Also, check us out on the Sirius XM app as well, and give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. We'll prepare for Falcons' first game coming up here on Monday. It's been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked on Sports Atlanta.